So our boy, old President Joe Biden, will be giving his State of the Union tonight, and in guest attendance, Senator Ben Cardin's guest will be Governor Wes Moore. Thought that was interesting. One of the reasons why Cardin invited Wes Moore was to kind of tout not only the fact that he's the first black governor of Maryland, which is a great thing, a beautiful thing, but also to tout the upcoming, was thought to be the upcoming great contributions that the Inflation Reduction Act will be able to make towards Maryland's transportation, infrastructure, and the Chesapeake Bay. And that part of his quote got me into the idea of doing a State of the Bay report. So this is my State of the Chesapeake Bay report. So let's first look at our most precious and well-known resource, the blue crab. They are in the decline. We have a third straight year of a decline in the blue crab population, and the Chesapeake Bay just earned a grade of D+ in the annual State of the Bay report from the Chesapeake Bay Foundation. So yes, my idea of doing a State of the Bay report is not a new idea. The Chesapeake Bay Foundation does this once a year, and I am simply just copying and pasting. Next up would be the good old striped bass population, also known as rockfish around these parts. This is down 50% over the last decade and a half. You can see in this graph that for the last 4 years, we have seen a continual decrease in the juvenile haul catch population. That's basically, well, they'll go and they'll take a net and they'll measure the average fish that they catch per net per haul, and that gives them a good idea of the current juvenile striped bass population and what that means for the future population. So this is down a lot. The Atlantic population of striped bass, again, is down 50% over the last decade and a half. Now, one little known fact that I didn't realize was that actually 70 to 90% of the Atlantic striped bass population actually habitats or migrates and spawns in the Chesapeake Bay. Don't worry, it gets worse from there. An excellent written article by Gerald Weingart of the Bay Journal, it's on baltimorebrew.com, details the absolute failure of multiple governors from multiple states, Pennsylvania, Virginia, Delaware, who completely failed to maintain and improve our waterways like they promised roughly 40 years. Clean Water Act lawsuits back in the mid-2000s, and this forced the surrounding states of the Chesapeake Bay to meet minimum requirements of the pollutant levels, reduction in those pollutant levels in the next 15 years. By 2025 was the date that they had to hit for these reduction numbers. And this mainly focused on nitrogen and phosphorus numbers. So these states meet annually at what's called the Chesapeake Executive Council with the U.S. Environmental Protection Agency. And they're supposed to effectively take account of how well the pollution requirement, how well they're on track to meet the pollution requirement is going. And surprise, surprise, it's not been going well at all. Now, of course, when they get together, they talk about things in terms of just constant progress. But what we're not talking about is the fact that we have not met one deadline since 2010 for the reduction numbers. So, Mr. Weingarten basically details in this report how the states need to reduce bay nitrogen loads by about 72 million additional pounds just to meet the actual goal, right, of 2025 goal, which is on track to meet only 42% of the nitrogen reductions and 64% of the phosphorus reduction. So, in addition to all of the physical trash, the nitrogen, the phosphorus, this climate within the bay is creating actual diseases, flesh-eating diseases, amoebas. A lot of times, these are organisms that proliferate in waters high in phosphorus and nitrogen content, high in bacteria content. And these have been occurrences that have been happening more and more frequently every year in the Chesapeake Bay waters. We also are seeing, like you saw before, our fisheries collapse. So the oyster population, soft clams, shad, rockfish, sturgeon, crabs, all results of failure to maintain the waterways. Our grasses, which are almost disastrous levels, our acreage of grasses are only 36% of the $185,000 acre goal that was supposed to be achieved by 2010, right? So that goal that we were supposed to hit was 13 years ago. We are only 36% on the way to achieve that goal that was supposed to be hit 13 years ago, right? So great job there. The Chesapeake Bay watershed also lost 29,000 acres of tree canopy from 2014 to 2018. This was a big thing under Hogan because he actually was shown that he actually profited a lot from real estate deals that knocked down a lot of tree canopy and wilderness in the Chesapeake Bay areas. And a lot of people, well, I say a lot of people, people within the know that actually care about the environment and work in these sectors, understood that Hogan was very much so damaging our waterways in order to profit off these real estate deals. And the goal was actually to increase this acreage by 2,400 by 2025. So we've lost 29,000 acres when we were supposed to be increasing the acreage of tree canopy and hopefully hitting a total increase of 2,400 by 2025. It is said that only a little more than 70% of the bay waters remain polluted, which is actually a very slight decrease from the disastrous pollution levels in 1985, where we basically had a complete moratorium on all fishing, on all crabbing, in order to try and restore our populations. And in the 90s, you actually see a lot of the populations bounce back and the water become much healthier. But that is a long time ago, and we are seemingly back to where we started. Now, Governor Moore has made this somewhat of a priority. Pretty much under Hogan, this was a complete lack of concern. And that's why things got so bad. I know many of you have seen my wastewater treatment video on my previous Facebook post, where we really detail how the failures at the Back River wastewater treatment plant and the Patapsco wastewater treatment plant completely just deluged the Bay estuary with millions of pounds of untreated wastewater, and completely wiped out many forms of life that we actually rely on to keep the health of the bay intact. So, in the new 2024 fiscal budget that was proposed on July 1st, Moore is actually including 43 new positions at the Maryland Department of Environment. 3.7 million is going to be going to the agency to clear what's called a backlog of expired pollution discharge permits. Now, I had to research what this meant, and I hate the fact that they put these types of news stories within an article like this, and when nobody knows what the hell that is. Who knows what a expired pollution discharge permit is? But basically, it is thought that them clearing that backlog was going to help rein in on industrial pollution. He also brought on another 24 positions for workers focused on the regulation of drinking water after the disastrous E. coli bacteria drinking water infestation that happened earlier or in the middle of 2022. So, because I don't like being uh, one of those sources of information that uses words and ideas that people don't understand, I'm going to explain what a wastewater permit is. And basically, these are permits that the city and the state forces companies and facilities who use water in the implementation of their business or products being manufactured, who use water, to purchase a permit that not only assesses a fee for them doing this, right? So it's a way to collect revenue that's supposed to go back towards helping mitigate such wastewater dumpings, but it also implements within that permit. It specifies the type of actions they're supposed to be taking to reduce as much as they can on their end of the pollution, to notify the state when they're dumping. There's actual extra fees if they dump more than the allowed amounts, or more. And there's standard amounts that you can dump, and if you go over that, you gotta add in an extra fee, which is going to mean, of course, more tax dollars. So apparently, under Governor Hogan and of course our previous governor, the permits for these wastewater treatment plants were going completely uncontrolled. They were going outdated and expired, which means they were not collecting the tax revenue and they were not updating the actual requirements for these facilities. They weren't updating how these facilities need to control their specific pollution and the types of new technology that would be mandated for them to implement over time. So a lot of these companies were just going ahead with the old outdated permit and continuing to dump in ways that didn't have to be effectively done. There was better ways of handling the water that they needed to dump, right? So this was something that caught the eye of many environmental agencies. Environmental Integrity Project is a department that basically came upon this, and they did a deep investigation. They found that there was 200 or more outdated or expired water pollution control permits, which they nicknamed zombie permits. Valley Proteins was said to be one of the worst offenders of this. They have a poultry facility in Dorchester County. They also have a facility up here in Brooklyn Park, and they were suspected of dumping for a long time, and then it was confirmed that they were dumping massive amounts of ammonia, phosphorus, and other pollutants in the Transquaking River, and they effectively were penalized 540,000 by the MDE. So unsurprisingly, the state of the Bay does not look good, right? If you've paid any attention to the general press releasings on the Bay, if you've paid any attention to some of the content that I put out, it's generally, unfortunately, very negative news. And unfortunately, the one agency, the EPA, that's supposed to really enforce this with a heavy hand, has completely been uh, almost uninterested and in many ways just refusing to actually hold many of the states, including Maryland, accountable for the complete devastation that has occurred in our bay and the fact that they were specifically supposed to be hitting these metrics by 2025, and every single step of the way showed that they were not able to do so and were actually heading in some scenarios the opposite way. So the participating states in the Bay program that were supposed to be reducing these pollutants and had these hard numbers to hit, given by the EPA, the federal government, have been given a recalibration period. Basically, this year, they can just figure things out. We're no longer really expecting anybody to do anything of any real substance. So this bit of light at the end of a tunnel here with Wes Moore and the fact that he's actually willing to fund MDE, actually fulfill positions that were missing, hopefully is some sort of improvement. Of course, time will remain to be seen, right? I mean, the problem with politicians trying to make these types of changes is that the people that are actually polluting are usually also the biggest campaign and donors and are intertwined with the commerce of the state, right? So, in order for them to continue to be able to prosper and therefore employ people of the state and therefore contribute to the state GDP and therefore contribute to campaigns and donors, they need to be able to pollute at levels that are just unsustainable. So we're at a very much so at a crossroads here where we need to decide if we care more about our environment or more about capitalism. And it's an unfortunate choice because both are very important, right? And both are intertwined and ingrained in our country. So I'm hoping Westmore can help shed more light, not only on this issue, but continue to promote the fact that this is a more important issue than what we've been treating it. And I will definitely keep track of it. Until next time.